Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive turning point in the sport. We're looking at how two totally different moments, Celtic's incredibly gritty 1967 victory and Rinus Michels' highly academic Dutch Revolution, basically shattered an era of defensive dominance. Together, they gave birth to the modern attacking football we all know and love. We're tracing the roots of that beautiful, free-flowing game back to a time when, frankly, football was suffocating under a heavy blanket of hyper-defensive tactics.
To really understand this revolution, we have to rewind and set the scene in the 1960s. Imagine a game where the primary objective wasn't actually to score goals, it was simply to stop the other team from playing. It was this deeply stagnant era. Attacking flair, that was actively discouraged. Instead, it was all about rigorous physical containment, which naturally begs the ultimate tactical question. How exactly do you break down a wall that is literally designed to be impenetrable?
So let's start with part one, the ultimate defensive wall.
To truly understand this enemy, we have to look at Inter Milan and their manager, Helenio Herrera. This guy was a titan. His team had already won 2 of the last 3 European Cups, and going into the 1967 final in Lisbon, they were the overwhelming favorites. Everyone expected them to secure a famous tripletta. Their secret? A system called catenaccio, which literally translates to door bolt. And man, it lived up to its name. They heavily prioritized defense to secure these marginal, grinding victories. Basically, once they got a 1-goal lead, they locked the door. They retreated, absorbed the pressure, and just strangled the life out of the match. It brought them massive success, sure, but it was suffocating to watch, and even worse to play against.
Moving on to part 2, Celtic's attacking revolution.
The absolute first disruptors to smash into that defensive wall were Jock Stein and Celtic FC. Stein just wasn't interested in defensive stalemates. He truly believed his team's momentum and unyielding spirit could crack the Inter Milan code. And it was the ultimate David versus Goliath clash, right? On one side, you have Inter Milan, an incredibly wealthy, polished machine packed with seasoned international stars. And on the other side, you have Celtic, a squad where literally every single player was born within a 30-mile radius of Glasgow. It was a local community team stepping up to take on the defensive titans of Europe.
Stein's incredibly pragmatic attitude anchored their whole strategy. He demanded relentless, totally unyielding offensive pressure against Inter Milan's formidable wall. Before the match, he famously declared that Celtic would be the first team to bring the European Cup back to Britain, and he made it clear they wouldn't do it by hiding. They were going to take the fight straight to Herrera's catenaccio system. They were going to attack as they had never attacked before. It was bold, it was borderline emotional, and it relied purely on the sheer force of attacking will. And man, it was a dramatic match. Let's trace how it went down. Inter Milan got exactly what they wanted right out of the gate, a 7th-minute penalty, converted by Sandro Mazzola. True to form, Inter then immediately pulled 9 men back behind the ball, setting up that famous defensive wall. But Celtic? They didn't panic, not at all. They just bombarded Inter with shot after shot. Finally, just past the hour mark, Tommy Jamel leveled the score with an absolute thunderous strike. Then, with only minutes left on the clock, Stevie Chalmers redirected a shot to secure a legendary 2-1 victory. Just like that, they became the immortal Lisbon Lions. Celtic's victory sent shockwaves worldwide. It was heralded as a massive win for the sport, proving that pure attacking passion could actually triumph over negative tactics. It wasn't just a win for a Scottish club. It honestly felt like liberation for football itself. Even a Portuguese official watching the match was so moved he said Celtic's style was the true game. The media totally echoed this, arguing that sooner or later, Inter's refusal to play entertaining football just had to catch up with them. The spell of catenaccio was finally broken.
Which brings us to part 3, the birth of total football. So while Stein championed this pragmatic, fiery attacking style, over in Holland, a guy named Rinus Michels was taking that same attacking desire and weaponizing it with intense theory. You have to realize, until the 1960s, Dutch football was mostly amateurish. They were completely off the radar internationally. But Michels, he was building a highly engineered, deeply intellectual system. They called him the General, and he completely flipped the joyous emotional tone of Celtic's victory into an era of ruthless academic discipline. He famously declared football as war. He demanded a level of aggression and psychological toughness his players had never even conceived of, literally dragging Dutch football into the professional age through the sheer force of his personality. To pull this off, He demanded up to 5 grueling training sessions a day. 5. He was forcing a level of intensity and physical dominance never before seen in Holland. Mickle Hills utilized these brutal Italian-style preseason training camps. And this wasn't just about getting them fit, it was about instilling absolute, unquestioning discipline. He knew that to execute his complex tactical theories on the pitch for a full 90 minutes, they needed an unbreakable physical foundation.
And what were those theories? Well, these tactical elements, executed flawlessly by absolute stars like Johann Cruyff, organized attacking into an irresistible, fluid system that became known as total football. Players weren't locked into static roles anymore. Attackers and defenders were constantly switching places. They hunted the ball in packs, defending aggressively all the way up on the halfway line, and purposefully building their attacks from the back. It was this incredibly sophisticated, collaborative effort, and Michels was the chess master moving all the pieces. All right, let's look at part 4, the 1974 World Cup. This entire theoretical evolution reached its glorious, yet ultimately tragic, climax against host nation West Germany. Under Mickels' guidance, the Dutch national team had swept majestically into the final in Munich. They were displaying a sophistication that was completely unmatched in history. Just picture this opening scene. The whistle blows, the Dutch string together a mesmerizing series of passes, culminating in a penalty, and they go up 1-0 in the very first minute before a single German player even touches the ball. It was breathtaking. But instead of putting the game away, they got drunk on their own brilliance and arrogantly began to toy with their opponents. Their tragic flaw was a massive breakdown in discipline. Mickels somehow lost his iron grip, allowing total rock-star behavior to distract the team, and it cost them a 2-1 defeat. It turns out Mickels had been splitting his time during the tournament, flying back and forth to coach Barcelona. He was so overconfident, he didn't even send a scout to watch West Germany's semi-final match. Meanwhile, his players were staying out late, having pool parties, and losing focus. The West Germans, who had prepared meticulously, fought back, won the final 2-1, and completely shattered the Dutch dream. After the dust settled, fans claimed Holland were the moral winners because of their beautiful play. Johann Cruyff even echoed that sentiment later on. But as author David Winter points out, beautiful losing never interested Michels. Their lack of mental sharpness birthed a tragic legacy. That hubris left a lingering psychological scar on Dutch football, a legacy of playing exquisitely, only for their nerve to totally fail them when it mattered the absolute most. Let's wrap up with part 5, Architects of Modern Football.
Despite the hybris of 1974, the broader battle for the soul of football had been won by the attackers. That oppressive, joyless era of deep defensive lines locking down games for marginal 1-0 victories, it was definitively over. Both Stein's grit and Mitchell's academic systems dismantled that stagnant defensive era, just from completely different angles. Stein showed the world that a team of local boys with relentless, passionate attacking intent could topple the biggest defensive giants. And Mitchell's proved that attacking football could actually be organized into a highly disciplined, theoretically sound, and devastatingly fluid system. Two radically different men, right? But together, they forged the exact blueprint for the dynamic sport we see today. Today, every single time you see a team press high up the pitch or relentlessly attack a low block, you are essentially seeing the ghosts of Jock Stein and Rinus Michels at work, which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to think about. Could the beautiful attacking game we watch today even exist without the fiery passion of the Lisbon Lions and the tactical genius of total football? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.